I always feel like everybody in the world needs to have a job like that because it really teaches you
To get out.
how well it teaches you how important it is to treat the people in public at places with respect.
Yeah.
Um, because like I worked at my first job was at Best Buy, and it was like, it was like that where I had to deal with all these people, and I would just be like, why do you act that way to somebody that you don't know that's trying to help you in public? And so I
As
think
a
that
grown-ass adult as well. Like,
so I always just assume that the quote unquote Karens out there are ones that they've never had to have a job like that, and
yes.
they don't
Yeah.
understand. And so I think it's really is like an eye opener to like, holy shit. And so, like I will never go anywhere in public, fast food, whatever it is, and
Yeah.
I without saying like please and thank you and being super polite. I mean, unless of course somebody's fucking rude to my face, but that doesn't happen very often. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
but
I
anyway,
remember there was one specific woman who came up to me, and I hadn't worked at Tesco more than 48 hours before this happened. She came up to me and she said in like the poshest British accent you will ever hear, excuse me, but when are you going to reduce the price of these raspberries? And I was like, well, it's not time yet. She's like, well, I think it's bloody piss poor you're making me pay full whack for half decent raspberries. And I said, I'm sorry, the system will not allow me to print off labels on this machine until it hits 10 o'clock. This is a Sunday. So we're all, no, sorry, it wasn't a Sunday, but 10 o'clock was the time for reductions. Anyway, she said, well, that's fine. I'm going to pack up my things and I'm going to go to Lidl across the road instead. I said, that's fine. I'm paid by the hour.
yeah.
Like, yeah, it's not coming out of my pay. So
Yeah, I really think that in this, I'm pretty sure that this is gonna, 10, 20 years from now, this will be a thing that nobody remembers. But I think that one of the worst things in the world is the creation of the saying, the customer is always right. Because
wrong.
that is that's the dumbest thing.
Yeah.
Because I mean, yeah, sure, the store wouldn't be functioning if people weren't there spending money. But if you really want to weigh it out, people need the stuff already.
Mm-hmm.
The store wouldn't really be functioning without the employees. So
Yeah. I remember COVID was the big one. Coronavirus. 2020 was, you know what, we can lead into the episode with this. We'll probably start with the retail stories, but
yeah,
let's just go into it with this because I'm not afraid to, say anything and lose the retail gig anymore.
Yeah, you've graduated that mess.
Yeah, a couple times now, but yeah. Oh my God, like I just remember I was essentially a makeshift security guard at one point for like I say security guard in quotation marks. It was more of a case of keeping the one-way system flowing because in the early days of COVID, we'd like set up this what looked like a hurdles run when in actual fact it was like a slalom of cones and road barriers and that ferried people in. I mean, I don't know why I'm explaining this. Everybody who went to a store in the last 4 years had seen that.
I mean, there are still places now that have those little markers showing you how far back to stand in a line and stuff like that.
Various levels of peeled away by many feet walking over them, but they're still there.
Yeah.
It's something that I find funny is like the hand sanitizers that haven't been refilled in 2 years. Because they're still there, but no one's refilled them since 2022, and it's one of those things that I look back and I think, wow, the world really did just shut down that,
Hmm?
you know, that time. And it's weird because to me, at the time, it felt like an eternity, and now I'm out the other end of it, and like it all just felt like one giant day.
Yeah.
It's weird. Like, you can't go outside. You can go outside slightly. Wait a minute. You can't go outside, kinda. Go outside. Can't. Maybe. Ah, fuck it. No one's doing what I say. You know? So yeah, looking back, because we actually started like just after the very start of that.
Yeah. It was June of 2020, I believe.
June 2020, and it's coming up on 4 years, which is crazy.
Yeah.
But I just remember at that time the amount of just idiocy and ignorance I saw from the general public.
Yeah.
Just, oh my God. Man, most
I mean,
notably, sorry, I was just going to say where I was going with that is there's this like makeshift cordon fence, this like fold out accordion looking ass thing that you roll around on wheels and then you pull it out and it's a big ass fence. Fences
yeah.
off the whole aisle. Well, during COVID, the height of COVID, when it was at its worst and scariest, because nobody really knew how fucking deadly it was.
Yeah.
I remember we had to, the banana hammocks, you know,
Oh, yes.
how they put bananas out and they're on these like little hammocks.
Yeah.
Well, in order to get to all the bananas, it was a time consuming job. It would take at least 20 minutes to do this like one area. And I'd pull out the bananas and I'd open the box. But in order to do that without people leaning over and like breathing on you this fucking close to reach in and get a thing of bananas that was ripe enough for them, I just started doing a semicircle with this fence thing around me that very clearly on every slat says no entry, do not cross. And within like 30 seconds of me putting this thing together and start filling up the bananas, this dude looks me dead in the eye, walks up and does this. Opens the thing, comes in and grabs the closest possible banana to me and walks away. Now, it's a good thing we wore masks back then because I think I rattled off just about every name you could call a man in that moment. But honestly, man, that was a wild time.
I mean, I already am a person that doesn't go many places, and that's just because of people. And so, but not all people, but there are some great people out there. I'm going to do a nice little transition here because before we start,
it's warranted.
Look at that. That was good. I wanted to read an email that we got.
Okay.
Before a fan email that we got before we start, just because I don't get these very often and sometimes they're really nice and I just like to hear from the audience. And
does it say, Stephen and Eddie, I'm looking at you through the power of a high velocity rifle?
No, not yet. I haven't gotten
through the scope of
yet.
A high velocity rifle. Sorry.
The
phone booth scenario.
This is from Greg, who's from Australia.
G'day.
And he literally says, "G'day, old head and Eddie. Longtime Aussie peanut butter platypus listener here. I always laugh when I hear that name as I occasionally see platypuses in the stream near my house. They're cute little things. They're cute little things, but can be venomous if they hit you with their flippers. Anyways, just wanted to thank you guys for the awesome podcast and for keeping me entertained at work for several years now. I've listened to almost every episode, including those on artists from genres that usually wouldn't appeal to me. Thanks to those episodes, I've discovered a love for several new bands such as Saigon Kick, Nine Inch Nails, and Dream Theater, despite old head not being overly taken with Dream Theater. Was wondering if there's any way one could put in a suggestion for a band to be cranked and ranked in a future episode. I know you guys would have a list or something, but just wondering, would be happy to donate some money to a Patreon or similar to make it happen if that would help. If not, that's totally fine. Love the banter and random tangents you guys go on. It all makes for an entertaining listen, so thanks again, and keep those episodes coming. cheers from down under, and hope the colonoscopy went well, Greg.
Oh yeah, I meant to ask about that.
Yeah. So first off, thanks, Greg, for the kind email, and just so you know, like, instead of me responding to you on an email, because I'm really bad at typing, especially now that we're in the thumb typing era as well.
Yeah.
I'm responding on an episode, and but yeah, people suggest bands all the time, and you're welcome to suggest whoever. And most of the time, it is already in our list. There's no need to send us money, but because that made me think. I go like, oh, wouldn't it be funny if we just like put they have everybody, like, whoever donates the most money will do their band. But then I thought, that's kind of shady.
I did have like a Mr. Krabs moment there where I thought, ooh, money, 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 money. Arr, 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 arr.
Yeah.
But honestly, there may be a thing. We could maybe come up with a suggestions poll or something like that, maybe for like special episodes, maybe.
Yeah.
Like if someone requested, I don't know. I'm trying to think. I'm just spitballing ideas at this point.
Uh-huh.
At the end of the day, the show is always going to be free, you know.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. So because I would like there to be input from the people that watch the show or listen to the podcast or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know the best way to do that, but I would be down for that. But yeah, Greg, just if you're listening to this or watching this, email me or comment on YouTube if you're watching, with the band that you want us to do. Because sometimes somebody mentions a band and I go, oh, we should move that one up the list, because now that they've mentioned it, I'm actually very interested in doing this. So, but once again, Greg, thank you for the kind words. And the honestly, the biggest compliment for me is whenever anyone says that they even listen to us talk about bands they don't care for. And
Yeah, that means a lot. Yeah.
yeah. And that's kind of what I like to do with every episode. I'm like, I want to be as entertaining as possible, even if we're talking about something that I know, like today, all sorts of people don't like Warrant. So, and so we're trying to make it as entertaining as possible. Now, that being said, let's move over to the colonoscopy. I do think I thought about that earlier today, and I went, isn't it funny that the last episode we did, I'm like, I'm gonna have a colonoscopy, and then we disappeared for 2 weeks. but I'm active on social media, so a lot of people can see that I'm perfectly fine. But yeah, the colonoscopy was I want to do this as like a public service to any males 45 and older who have not done a colonoscopy. It is easy as fuck. It is the hardest part of the whole thing was after that day, after we did that last episode, I had to drink these really awful tasting concoctions that just made me like poo like a river. But really all you got to do, because you only got to drink those twice, and it's not like super big. And then as long as you get some of those like flushable wet wipes, so you don't get all like, fucked up down there, it ends up, you don't sleep very well because your stomach's kind of all fucked up, but it's not really that bad. And then when you go the next day to the actual colonoscopy, I don't know what they gave me because I didn't go to sleep, but I just remember like they wheel me into the room and they have me roll over on my side. And of course, I'm wearing the gown that has like no, back to it or whatever. Yeah. They roll me over on my side, and then one of the ladies comes over, and I have like an IV in this hand, and then she injects whatever this thing is, whatever this serum that's supposed to, numb me or whatever it's supposed to do.
Yeah.
I didn't feel numb at all. All I remember is like there's a television where I'm seeing what they're doing inside me.
Wow.
And this is my whole experience. I just went, oh man, that's interesting. Oh, whoa, cool. And they're like, we're done. And I was like, what? So literally did not even like, it was so easy
Yeah.
And also kind of fascinating, just
Mm.
not only because of like, you don't see that part of you often,
Yeah.
but also on top of that, just the idea of like, what is this drug that they gave me that I didn't go to sleep, I didn't feel numb, I just kind of went, oh, okay. Because that's what I want to take that for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Whatever that drug is. That's
Yeah.
just like it was just, and so then, and then you're done. And then you get results later, and I'm all good. I gotta go back again in 5 years and do it again. But I just want
Well,
I feel like it's important to do that for anybody. So in the future, like when you hit 45 or whatever, you can remember what I said and be like, it's really no big deal at all.
yeah.
It's like it's actually, yeah, it was absolutely nothing. And so there you go. Everybody go get your butt checked out, because you never know. If they find something early, you can take care of it. I want you
Hmm.
all to live very long lives, because I want you to listen to all of our episodes for however long we do this. Not
Hmm.
just the men, but the women. Women don't have to do the colonoscopy kind of thing, but they have to do so much other horrible shit that we don't gotta do. Like, could
Yeah.
you imagine? Like, they gotta go and they gotta put up their legs, and they have to have a little thing inserted that holds them open, so
Mm.
some doctor can just look inside. And sometimes they'll have to scrape things off. It's like my wife's told me about stuff, and I go, "That's awful."
Yeah.
Women are treated so awfully, even in situations where it's like they're going to a doctor. I'm just like, oh, it's too rough. It's rough being a woman.
I think the fact that the chainsaw was originally invented for childbirth purposes says it all. Like, Jesus.
Is that
fucking
true?
Christ. That's
Is
true.
that true?
The original idea for the chainsaw was for childbirth reasons.
What the fuck? That
I'm
is.
I'm praying it's for cesarean, birth, and not to just hack you in half.
Yeah.
But I would not be surprised, judging by the fact.
Let's-
Oh man,
Ooh,
you know what?
that took a gruesome turn right
Yeah,
there.
this isn't fucking gruesome. These people just wanted to hear about Warrant, and they've heard about colonoscopies and genital mutilation.
Don't worry, we'll get to cherry pie eventually. All right.
Jesus Christ! And I need to know now. Chainsaw original use. In 1780, two Scottish doctors invented the prototype of the chainsaw, not to cut down trees or clear debris. No, John Aitken and James Jeffrey invented the hand crank chainsaw to cut through the pelvises of delivering mothers who were having trouble pushing their babies out, man. Fuck! That is grisly. Like, it'd be
I
one
guess-
thing if it was just a clean blade, but it's a fucking chainsaw.
Well, I'm assuming that it doesn't resemble the chainsaw that we end up using on trees and wood or whatever. It's probably even closer, because they have the doctors have those things. It looks like almost like a pizza cutter, and it's like, it's
Yeah.
like, although now they use lasers and shit. It's like we're in the
Yeah.
future. Anyway, I don't
So,
know. I don't know if you
Warren.
know this about me, but I pack a chainsaw, and I will skin your ass raw. All right.
What?
Anyway, Warrant.
Yes.
Yeah, let's get to the shit. This is Cranked and Ranked. Oh, hi. Cranked
Yeah.
and Ranked this is like one of those episodes of a TV show where like the beginning part like is really long, and you're like, what? We just watched the whole episode and now the episode's beginning.
Yeah.
But Cranked and Ranked, where we rank artist discographies, and we're ranking the discography today of Warrant, which I have a lot of things to say about Warrant. I like Warrant, but I have a lot of thoughts, because obviously we had to take some weeks off, and this is, I knew we were doing this, and so I've had a lot of time to not only listen to all the albums, but go back and watch a couple of the VHSs that I have. I have the two VHSs they put out in the 80s and late 80s, early 90s. But
Nice.
and I thought about it a lot. So I have a lot to say. But we're dealing with 9 albums, and my introduction to Warrant was much like everybody else's, really. I sometime around 89, I saw the video for, I think Down Boys was the first video I saw. Although I feel like it might have been Heaven, because
Hmm.
that was like the really big breakout track on that album.
Too far away.
Yeah. And but at that point I liked a lot of that music, but I wasn't really listening to that music. And in '89, I was all about, Faith No More and King's X and Living Color
Hmm.
and bands like that. And then quickly after that I'd get into thrash and stuff like that. But I would never turn off a Warrant video because I thought that like the songs were always really catchy and I've always really appreciated that.
Yeah.
But it was later on down the line that I kind of, when I started my deep dive, kind of going back to a lot of these bands, that I went to Warrant and I was like, oh shit, yeah, they put out some really great music.
Hmm.
And of course, they're still around today in a different form, obviously, because Janie's no longer with us. But that was my beginning. And where was your first introduction to Warrant?
Uh, probably, probably the glam metal episode of it was either the glam metal or the grunge episode of Metal Evolution. That really
Oh,
good Sam Dunn series. It
yeah.
would have been the glam episode, and like as far as documentaries go, the Metal Evolution series was just incredible.
Yeah.
Um, but like the thing is, when I watched it, I was like deep in the grunge thing,
Hmm.
but I also had this little thing in my life called Grand Theft Auto Vice City, and I'd always loved the 80s rock in that game. So when
Yeah.
I found out that grunge basically, hated glam, I was like, huh, well, that doesn't mean I have to. So I
Yeah.
just, yeah, very quickly, I was a thrash kid turned grunge who suddenly liked glam as well. And I'm this like holy trinity of that era.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um,
I mean that's very Gen Z
yeah, yeah,
of you,
absolutely.
which I
Yeah.
which I like. I like that because honestly, there are certain things. I'll get into this a little bit later, more in depth with my opinions here, but there are certain things that are part of that sort of default
Groupthink.
a group think setting that so many people still can't get rid of. And
Yeah.
but at this point in 2024, if you're still out there hating on Poison and Warrant and Winger, then it's kind of like saying, "Hey, I haven't evolved in 30 years."
Yeah. I have
um,
an extremely base level and unevolved opinion, you
yeah,
know.
exactly. I almost feel like I want to like come up with some sort of. If I was younger and cooler, I would like come up with a new term that everyone can just like put that whenever somebody does that kind of thing. Because it's not just, it's like musical opinions and then jokes about stuff that have been done to death for 20 years. And I almost feel like I just want everyone in the world just to put like hashtag default or something like that.
Yeah.
Just because
Yeah.
it's like takes zero thinking, and most of
Yeah.
these people aren't thinking. They're
It's a very
just like, oh, I
beige
don't like
opinion.
this. Yeah. So I just think that,
Unseasoned. Unseasoned is
oh,
a good one.
unseasoned. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Congratulations, you're bland.
not to say that everyone's supposed to like everything, but
No,
there are those people that it all comes around with how you communicate. Because there are some people that the way they communicate, I go, oh, this person just does not like this kind of music. And then there's those
yeah.
other ones where you go, this person literally just thinks that this is what they're supposed to say.
And my least favorite trait in people, I had this conversation very recently with someone. It just came up. It was like, what's your least favorite quality in a person? And I think mine, for want of a better word, was just willful ignorance,
Yeah,
where someone's very loud about something, but they also are very loud about not wanting to understand or learn about it whatsoever. So
yeah,
if someone in a battle vest turned around and said, "I don't like poison," I'd be like, "Duh." But then I'd also be like, you can't deny that on Skinny Bop gets a rock club fucking jumping.
Oh hell yeah.
So, you know, people like it for a reason. Like, I think Faith No More are a vastly superior band to Red Hot Chili Peppers. Doesn't change the fact that Red Hot Chili Peppers have, you know, become one of the most successful rock bands of all time.
Yeah.
People like things, you know, and I can't change that, and I shouldn't
Yeah.
want to change that, you know?
Yeah. Really, I think it all just boils down to being mature.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah, exactly.
There are plenty of people even older than I who are who act like they're still 12. I literally had a guy recently, and I ended up, because he did it so many times, I deleted like so many different comments. He decided that he thought I looked too young. And all of his comments were just commenting all over the place, like, you're a millennial, you can't call yourself old head, you can't talk about this music. And finally, like, one of his just said, you know, he wasn't even around in the grunge period, fuck you. And I'm just like, did you? And the funny thing is, one of them was on a video where in the video I talk about how old I was during a certain period of time.
Yeah.
And if the
You're born in
motherfucker,
the fucking 70s.
if the motherfucker had actually taken the time to listen, he would, like, I apologize that I don't look old. And I love how in the world of metal,
Sorry
and
for
rock,
aging well.
in the world, I don't think I've aged that well at all, but apparently I have. But in the world of metal and rock, isn't it funny how people are obsessed with being old? Like, everyone is just, it doesn't matter if you were there when the album came out. Awesome. Doesn't make your experience any more valid than somebody who discovered the album this year. So it's just so funny. Everyone's so like rushing to be like, I saw this. You can't talk about it because I'm old. I'm like,
Yeah.
fuck you. You're gonna die first. Have fun with that.
That's what always used to piss me off when I go to like the comment sections of like songs that were in games, and you know, I'd see a comment from someone my age who said, heard this for the first time back in '06 on GTA San Andreas and never looked back. Kick-ass song. And then you get like fucking 60, you know, 58-year-olds on it who are just like, yeah, well, I didn't need no stupid game to tell me what music to like. And it's like,
yeah.
you probably heard it playing in a fucking arcade, you know?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Thanks, Lars. That was a Lars noise you just made.
Yeah. Exclamation point.
Yeah. I'm sorry we're kind of on a rant, but it's just, but
How long is
there's
this?
a lot, there's a lot of those people out there where it's just, I can't get over the fact how people just want to conduct themselves like
Buffoonery.
like overgrown babies, essentially.
I was here first, so I like it more, and you can't like it as much as I do because I'm older.
Yeah, no, I don't care. If I cared,
Put your Pokemon cards away. It's bedtime.
we would. This would be a very different show if I acted that way towards you. If you were, I would be like, "Fuck you! You gotta use a video game, and you weren't there."
Yeah. What's that? You were born 20 years after me? Well, fuck you for that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Anyway, but to Warrant, because I guess it makes sense because Warrant was a band back in the day that was divisive. What do they call it? What do they say that?
Divisive, yeah.
We're really like, they were hated on.
Yeah.
A lot of people. But I think it's probably because they were the last really new, really successful band of that era, really. When you think about it, their first album came out in '89. Is there a band that came out after them that was that successful of that era at the end of the '80s?
It's either Warrant or Skid Row.
But Skid Row was... Didn't the Skid Row album come out in... Was that '89? Their first album in '89?
It was '89. Let me have a look. Skid Row.
Yeah. I think you're right. Skid Row '89, Slave to the Grind '91.
Yeah, I think Skid Row are the last. Well,
but Skid Row had more in common with like a Guns N' Roses. They had more of a street vibe. I think Warrant was, even though they still wore like leather jackets and stuff, they had more in common with Poison and other bands like that than Skid Row did.
Stylistically, yeah.
So I feel like that's probably why they get picked on, because if you know, Yeah, I mean, we'll get to that because we're going to talk about so many fucking albums here. We might as well get to it. I'm sorry, everybody, but we take a couple weeks off and we have a lot to say, I guess.
Yeah, I'd say, I suppose they were a long established band at that point. I was trying to think of what the last big smash of the hair metal era was, and it would be Adrenalized by Def Leppard. But they've been around. That's their fifth album at that point. So
because they were already established to that point where if they put something out, it was
got it. It's Mr. Big. Yeah.
But even Mr. Big, I wouldn't put them because Mr. Big's like a super group of like super uber talented people.
Yeah.
But you are right. One of the last big songs of the whole era into the 90s would have been To Be With You by Mr. Big, which is post Cherry Pie.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're probably right. Anyway, so we have 9 albums, and I honestly I don't know if I don't know if Robert Mason is still the singer of Skid Row. Skid Row. Warrant is the band we're talking about. Yeah, because okay, cool. Because he's on the last couple albums, and so the version of Warrant that's out there touring, I believe, is a good chunk of the original guys. Excuse me, with Robert Mason, who was the vocalist in Lynch Mob, which was George Lynch's. I don't know if Lynch Mob is still a thing, but that was George Lynch's band. He started in the 90s.
Yeah, Joey Allen, Eric Turner, Jerry Dixon, and Stephen Sweet. Yeah, so if we're talking like original members, then no. But if we're talking like the members that everybody talks about, that were on the albums,
because the beginning of Warrant is like early 80s, I believe, and Janie Lane is not involved until 87 or something, down the line. Yeah. Anyway, but that brings us to now, because I know we're going to be talking about probably some of the later albums here right now. So let's just get to it. We have 9 albums to talk about, and as usual, I give Eddie Sparxx the first shot at his ranking. So what is your number 9 Warrant album?
Okay, so my number 9 Warrant album is Under the Influence, and
funny enough, not my number 9.
I thought it wouldn't be, but like I was trying to think of this from the perspective of it had been 5 years, and they come out with an album, and it's a covers album with a few new songs, new originals on it. Yep. But here's what I have to say about Under the Influence. The covers album. It is a covers album. The covers are cool. I like this cover album, but it's a cover album. Last place on account of it being a cover album as opposed to an album of fully new material. However, it's a treat to hear Janie Lane. Sorry, I was about to say Lane Staley. It's a treat to hear him.
Skid Row, Warrant, Alice in Chains. It's
Kurt Cobain was in Poison.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, honestly, the covers on it are cool, and they did a good job. It's very early 2000s. The 90s are over. These 80s bands are coming back swinging, and they've done so with a covers album, and power to them. That's a good way to get something recognizable out there. And covers historically have worked for hair metal bands. That being said, it's a covers album, and
I get that. That's not my number 9, but it's almost because all right, my number 9 is Louder, Harder, Faster from 2017. Which is I think the last album that they did back in 2017, and it's the first Warrant album to come out after Janie's death.
Yes.
So my problem with the non-Janie Warrant albums, it's because you're going to hear me say similar things about all of the non-Janie albums, because sure Janie Lane wasn't an original member of Warrant, but as soon as he came in, he was primary songwriter. Mm-hmm. Sometimes the only songwriter, and so to a lot of us, Warrant is is an extension of Janie Lane. Like you hear his kind of songwriting and his kind of melodies and things like that. And then you get to these to later on where sure you got the core members of the band, which is cool and all, but none of the songs sound like Warrant songs to me.
No.
And so Louder, Harder, Faster is the ninth overall Warrant album, and it's a fun album, but all of the ones without Janie, the thought I have in my head is I go, well, it's fun, but it almost feels like this is the kind of music when you go to a local club and you're really buzzed and there's a band up there playing original hard rock songs. Mm-hmm. That's what this is. The songwriting is not to the caliber of what Janie Lane was writing, because he was a great songwriter, along with being a great singer. But so it gets a little bit dull just because it's just sort of regular sort of bar band rock music, and yeah. I just and on top of that, I think as a fan of what Janie Lane did, I kind of have an issue with the fact that they started writing songs almost like they just ignored everything except the first two Warrant albums. So all of a sudden it's like, oh no, we're just going to go back to doing this kind of stuff. And I'm like, but that's not what made Warrant cool to me. I mean, I like those albums, and those albums are going to be higher up. But just like with many, many bands, I'm a fan of Warrant because it goes from dirty, rotten, filthy, stinking rich to ultraphobic. And it's all really great stuff. So now it's like, okay, cool. We're because and it makes sense because they're probably writing songs that are more in line with those hits, because when they go on tour, I'm pretty sure that's what they're going to play. And why would you want to stick in some other stuff that doesn't sound the same with the hits that you're playing? So yeah. I get it. They still want to be an active band. They still have an itching to write songs, but I just don't. The quality is just not. It's fun. It's enjoyable if you like that kind of hard rock stuff, but it's just not. There's a huge difference between the two eras of the band when it comes to actual songwriting. So my number 9 is Louder, Harder, Faster.
Cool. So my number 8 is Rockaholic.
Hey, same.
Okay. So we can camp out in the
2011
Rockaholic zone. Yes, 2011. Yeah, I would have been 13 at the release of this, which is wild for me to think about. You know what I thought about today, just before I get into this? I thought to myself, wow, I discovered Metallica. What was 14 years ago around this time? What was 14 years ago in 2010? And I looked it up, and Load was 14 years ago at that point. I thought to myself,
yeah,
okay. Yeah, I've gotten to the point where I'm like, I remember what the 2000s Metallica website looked like, and you could change what it looked like according to what album you wanted, and it was really cool.
Yeah.
That's a Wayback Machine visit for me later tonight. But yeah, anyway, Rockaholic. It's the first album featuring Robert Mason. Yeah. And it's, honestly, it's something I'd call like a 2.5 to 3 star album for me, because it's standard 80s band does modern hard rock thing. It's good. Yeah. There's nothing groundbreaking, but it's good. But it lacks the personality that Janie Lane brought to Warrant. And it gives me the vibe of, this is a band well into their career putting an album out without the songwriter and another vocalist, and the fact that this came out the same year as Janie Lane's untimely demise, it just highlights to me what an absolute force of songwriting he actually was. And I think it's a travesty that Cherry Pie was a curse to him, because,
Well, I have thoughts on that too. We'll get to that later.
Yeah, yeah. It's it's one of those albums where it's like if it was on in the background,
Yeah.
it wouldn't offend me in the slightest. Would I ever reach for it if I was in a Warrant mood? No,
Yeah.
because what I look for when I go to Warrant is the songwriting and the unique voice that Janie Lane had, because he doesn't sound like your stereotypical, Jeff Scott Soto knockoff um 80s rock singer. He's got
Yeah.
his own voice. Like he's one of those where you're like, oh, that's Janie Lane.
Yeah.
That's a recording of Janie Lane singing. So yeah, for me, Rockaholic, it's okay, but
Yeah.
that and the production, I'm not a big fan of the production on this album.
Yeah. I mean, you obviously you get later. It's the overly
For Warrant,
compressed,
no. Yeah,
modern rock production. I honestly, I have very little to say about this because everything I said about Louder, Harder, Faster is exactly the same about this album. Only the production's a little better and the songs are a little better. That's it. It's literally, I feel exactly the same about those albums.
Yeah.
So, not much else to add there. Speaking of that, since this is like current, what do you call it? Current news. What is that word? Current events.
current events. Yeah.
Have you heard about, and if you have, how do you feel about the current Skid Row thing that's going on?
Oh, what that Sebastian Bach may reunite, or that he's just Eric Turner has. Wait, what's the singer from Skid Row called at the minute? Why did I say Eric Turner?
He left.
Oh, right.
Is his name Eric?
No, that's a guy from Warrant. Sorry, I'm mixed up here.
So the guy left because apparently he has some kind of health issues and couldn't be touring and stuff like that.
Right.
But then to close out this tour, they've got, is it Lizzie Hale from Hailstorm?
Yeah. Sorry,
doing,
Eric Gromwell. Sorry, I knew it was an Eric. Yeah.
And and I've seen footage of Lizzie Hale. It is Lizzie Hale. I don't want to
Lizzie Hale. Yeah, incredible singer.
And it sounds pretty good, but also I saw another article where the rumor was that she apparently signed on to be their singer. And I don't know if that's true or not, because she has her own career going on. But
yeah. Lizzie Hale, lead vocals 2024 present, says here on as a live member.
As a live member, yeah. So honestly, that's more interesting to me than what they've been doing. But at the same time, I go, come on, this is a good opportunity to just do a tour with Baz. Don't get the band back together. Take separate buses. Do the thing that we all want you to do. We'll come see it. We'll give you the money. And then go your separate ways. And then if anyone brings it up ever again, just be like, we did it. We did what you guys asked. And then that's it. So I'm hoping that they will do that, just because everything seems very up in the air. We already did Skid Row, by the way. You can go watch that episode.
Yeah.
I feel kind of the same way about the later day Skid Row stuff that I do about the later day Warrant stuff. So it's kind of I don't know.
I'd say I feel that way about most bands of this kind.
yeah, same. That being said, we should move on to number 7.
Cool. So my number 7 is Louder, Harder, Faster.
Okay.
And again, it's that thing of Robert Mason on vocals. He does a fine job.
Yeah.
It's standard 80s band does modern hard rock thing, but on this album I feel like there was a bit more variety with the types of songs they were doing. And to me, the production on this feels a bit more rocking as opposed to the slightly deader Rockaholic, but still it lacks lane, and it's that thing of it doesn't stand out but it doesn't offend me either.
Yeah.
One thing I will say is something I think that's become far too common in hard rock. especially in the last 20 years or so, is the fact that the vocals in like modern hard rock feel way too upfront to me. Like
Hmm.
it's not part of the song. It's almost like I'm listening to a version of the song where the vocals are like front and center to show you the vocal, you
Yeah.
know, whereas have it part of, because something that I loved about the 80s and into the early 90s was the fact that you would listen to a song and it would sound like they're in an arena or a large space and you're seeing them live,
Yeah.
or you know, and the vocals feel like an instrument. They're a part of the music,
Yeah.
whereas a lot of modern hard rock sounds like the band is playing down the hall and the singer is in my face and I'm not getting the correct amount of ambience, you know? And
Yeah.
it feels kind of off to me, where
Yeah.
I'm hearing a band absolutely fucking rocking out. And then I've got someone all the way up here, and I'm like, where the fuck
So,
did you come from?
sorry, everybody.
Like, yeah, yeah. Sorry about that. Yeah, I just wanted to demonstrate.
Yeah.
And there are bands that use it to good effect. Alter Bridge, I think Alter Bridge, and you know they want to get Miles Kennedy up front and center, and I get that, right? But it's when every band sounds like Alter Bridge is when, you know, I start to have this thing of, you know, if people thought hair metal was samey, like there's a lot more samey stuff now because you can just preset stuff and then just bada boom, bada bing, copy to a T. Whereas back in the day, it was
Yeah.
a lot more organic production wise.
I feel like there's probably numerous reasons why that's happened. And I feel like a really big one is that the idea of a producer is not anywhere what it used to be. And so
No.
now it almost feels like the you had a person who was a producer and they would have an engineer that worked for them, and a lot of them that's what they did. But
Yeah.
now it's almost like you're a guy that just knows how to run the board, and the band
Yeah.
just says do this or make this sound like this, and the band has no most of the time has no business being involved in that. It's just like, because some of the best albums I've ever heard, the band had no well, I mean they had input, but they didn't self-produce it. And because I think you need that
Yeah.
other person's ear, and a person that's professionally what they do.
Yeah.
But also nowadays you've got all the digital tools that you got. I think that people are still trying to figure out how to do it, even though
Yeah.
it's been 20 years or whatever of like doing that kind of shit. But yeah, I just think that there's something missing in the idea of album production. But unfortunately, there's not a lot of people complaining. I mean, we do, and people like us complain, but it apparently it can't be that many people complaining because people still make albums that sound like clickety clickety click bass drum, and
Yeah.
guitars are super like almost there's like the character is just sucked out of things. The human element is sucked out of things.
Yeah.
So and that in some music that sounds cool. In most music, though, I don't think it does. But I mean, whatever.
Yeah.
What I don't know how to do it right. That's why usually I just kind of shut up and just say, "Well, I don't like the way this album sounds," or "This album sounds good." Um, I started to go to school for that. In the early 2000s, I went to college for audio engineering, and very quickly realized that I'm not good enough. Because I could not wrap my head around so much shit in audio engineering, that I never really followed through with it.
It's its own thing. Like,
Yeah, but I have basic knowledge of how to work stuff, but
yeah.
that's really it.
I've kind of over the last couple years. By the way, the album is nearing completion for those who are eager to hear more from
Sage.
from my band Sage. We are very close to the end of
Nice.
the production cycle. We started doing it in 2022, and we're finally approaching a stage where we're happy with it, but we've essentially just become producers over the course of that. Sat in this room with these monitors and this computer, just going over it, re-recording shit to the point where now we're like, okay, album number 2 is gonna sound fucking beefy because we know how to do this now. And we can crank it out in record time compared to this one. But
Yeah.
yeah, it really is a thing of some things you have to learn by doing, and audio engineering is a hard thing to get into because it's like there's so many jobs where the expectation is they want a virgin with 10 years experience fucking, and it's like
Yeah. Yeah.
you know
Yeah. I just think that there are people that just they know how to use the equipment, and that's not enough.
Absolutely.
It's like the people out there that I come in contact with in the world of vinyl that are obsessed and know so much about the gear but know fuck all about music, but because they know a whole lot about gear, they will chime in because they feel like they've earned it, and I got to be like,
Yeah.
no, you haven't, sir, sorry.
Yeah.
But anyway, all right. What are we on? What were you on? Were you done with that
Yeah,
one?
may I recommend a Mizubuki Duel or a 6505? It's pretty much the greatest metal gig you can hope for. Here, check out this riff I just came up with. Gang, 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 gang. Real original, right? And it's like, you motherfucker spent all your time on gear sluts and didn't learn how to write a song.
Yeah.
But yeah. So where was I? Where were we? Sorry.
You were talking about louder, harder, faster, I believe.
Louder, harder, faster. Well, I better be faster because I've said all I need to say.
Cool. I'm ready to get through these. My number 7 is Born Again from 2006.
Same.
Their 7th album. The
Oh, wait.
only one. What
Oh, sorry.
is
Sorry.
that not your number 7?
No, it's my number 6. Sorry, I lost my place.
But that's fine because
Yeah.
I'll lead into you.
Nice.
But the only one with Jamie St. James from Black and Blue on vocals. Great singer. And once again, I feel exactly the same about this album as I do about the 2 later Janie-less albums, except for this one is I feel like the production is a little better, and I feel like the songs are a little better, but it still is like barely feels like a Warrant album. It just feels like an 80s hard rock album. And it became very apparent as I was listening to this, because I hadn't even heard Under the Influence. So Under the Influence all the way through, I hadn't heard those albums before we did this. And it was like, that's all I kept thinking was, man, it is so apparent how important Janie's songwriting was. Not just his voice, because his voice is unique and that's part of Warrant. But songwriting wise, you take that guy out of the equation and you have a perfectly fine band, not an exceptional or memorable one. So that's why that's my number 7 and your number 6. So go ahead, passing the baton to you.
I have this like subconscious thing where I've just begun to associate with any glam metal music coming out in the 2000s. To me, just sounds like reality TV hard rock.
Yeah.
Where it's like they filmed something for this, didn't they? I always get that Rock of Love, Osbourne's kind of vibe from so much of this 2000s era glam.
And a lot of these bands have not. You would think, because like, oh yeah, it's like 10, 15 years later, and they're still just churning out this same kind of stuff. And
Yeah.
but that it's not just them. Like there's so many bands that we crossed into this millennium,
Yeah.
and everybody got stuck. Everybody got stuck doing whatever they were doing. And it's time to get out.
You know what? I've found a good little article for this. It's on Paste magazine. What is it? 9 heavy metal musicians who became reality TV stars, and it's obviously Ozzy Osbourne, Gene Simmons, Dee Snider, with Growing Up Twisted, obviously Gene Simmons with Family Jewels, Bret Michaels, Rock of Love, Vince Neil had one, Tommy Lee Goes to College, how could I forget?
Yeah,
obviously Sebastian Bach had one. Like, he was in fucking Gilmore Girls. Steven Adler, Duff McKagan. Holy mother of
What
God.
was Duff McKagan in?
Duff McKagan. McKagan is the sole rocker on the list who didn't enjoy his brief stint on reality TV when his wife Susan signed up in 2010 to appear on E's Married to Rock.
Got it. Got it. Okay. Because he doesn't seem like a reality TV guy to me.
Yeah, it says here the former GNR bassist was forced to occasionally appear on the show.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. So honestly, like any glam metal music that came out in the 2000s, I just immediately think of reality TV.
Yeah.
I just can't help it. That's just something. Either way, though, like,
Or so sometimes on the worst side of the scale, it sounds like the early 2000s Disney movie when there'd be a rock band in the Disney movie.
yeah,
What they would sound like.
Yeah, I gotta be honest though, I have a soft spot for that stuff because I grew up on that shit. High School Musical, Camp Rock, I watched all of those, and yeah, I remember the Jonas Brothers. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I was too old for all that shit. I mean, I feel like when the Jonas Brothers came out, I was already 30.
Dude, I'm proud to admit this. I watched Hannah Montana. It was a fun show.
You know that I don't have a problem with that because I really like Miley Cyrus now.
Yeah.
I like her as a singer. I think she sounds cool as hell and seems cool also. So
I just love the fact that all of these Disney Channel original things are on Disney Plus, so I can just relive my childhood day to day, you know. And when the responsibilities of adult life really begin to weigh on me, I can just stick on some Sweet Life of Zack and Cody and pretend I'm 9.
You know what's weird about that is that I don't know what happened with me where that part of my life has been completely cut off to where that's not enjoyable to me anymore. Because a lot of people, their enjoyment, people will all be going back to be like, oh, I want to watch the stuff that I watched when I was a kid, and I'm like, that's not the stuff that I'm interested in. It's all my teenage years for me. Or if it's stuff from my childhood, it's the movies that I wasn't supposed to be watching when I was a kid. So it's all the Schwarzenegger and Stallone and all that stuff. But I have no desire, as much as I loved He-Man, I have no desire to go back and watch He-Man. Ninja Turtles, I feel there was that animated movie that came out that looked actually kind of fun, and I went, but I can't bring myself to go watch it because that's just connected to like childhood me, and that just seems utterly boring to me.
Yes, see the only thing I'm remotely nostalgic for in my teenage years is the music that I was into, whereas like I had a pretty decent, you know, setup with, you know, Nickelodeon and Disney Channel and Cartoon Network. All of them were just firing on all fucking cylinders in the 90s and 2000s, and I grew up on all of that.
Yeah.
And that's just. But roundabout, funnily enough, I know, you know, metal is an incredibly important part of my life, you know, rock music and everything, and all of the music that I discovered around that time. But I thought about this the other day. If I got the chance to go back and live through that all again, I wouldn't do it. High school fucking sucked for me. Like, I'd go back through college and do it again. So, like, from the age of 16 onward, I'd do that again. But I wouldn't do like early teens because that was a mess.
Yeah, I would not. I don't even want to go back to my 20s. That's like a time that I just unless I can. But no, because I don't want to go through. I don't want to go back and completely do things differently because I like where I ended up.
That's the thing.
But my 20s were fucking awful, and not only were they mostly awful. When I think about myself in my 20s, he was awful. Not as awful as many people. They're really awful people, but I was cringeworthy a lot of my 20s.
But there is that thing of, you know, it's like I wish I had the self-confidence I had when I was 18. And then I remember what a piece of shit 18-year-old me was.
I had no self-confidence when I was 18.
well, the thing is, like, I had come from a very bad place, and then when I went to college, it was a good place, and it was a very good place. But I'll be the first to admit that, you know, I was in a band where a couple of the members weren't pulling their weight, so I had to step up to the plate. and not only, not be a drummer, but be a lead guitarist and singer, in what was going to be a four-piece went down to a three-piece. So I
Hmm.
really had to make everything count. But I did and said some stuff around that time where it's like now it reads like the most spinal tap levels of ego. I'm like,
Yeah.
dude, get off your fucking high horse for a second and come back to reality. You are
Yeah.
applying 80s movie logic to real life. This is not how it works, you know.
Yeah.
But I'm a strong believer in the fact that if you don't cringe at least a couple former versions of yourself, you're not growing as a person. You need that internal cringeometer to be able to say, "Oh man, I'm
That,
never doing that again."
that's a good way to put it. That actually makes me feel better thinking about it
Yeah,
that way. That like I had to be annoying.
you gotta fuck up to get good, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of, I don't know, where are we? You're number six.
Yeah, sorry. Number six, Born Again.
Oh, yeah.
I'm gonna keep this brief because I'm pretty much on the same page. Reality TV hair metal. The first and
Yeah.
last album with Jamie St. James of Black and Blue on vocals. Great singer. I love some Black and
Mhm.
Blue. Hold on to 18. Devil's Juice kicks this one off, and the riffage on it is of a high groove factor, and Dirty Jack is a groovy hard rocker too. So me likey. Honestly, Jamie St. James does a fine job as a rock vocalist, but it's that Janie Lane songwriting. And honestly,
Yeah.
this album, you put it on at a party, and it's great party rock. You
Sure.
know, there's no denying that the music that latter day glam bands have given us is great for like a frat party or a rager,
Yeah. Yeah.
But the thing is that when I reach for Warrant in my listening library, there's a very distinct time period that I'm thinking when I think Warrant, and I'm
Yeah.
reaching for albums from then, because they just have a magic to them, you
Yeah.
know. And it's a
Agree.
magic that a lot of people shit on, and I think that's very unfair. Um,
Yeah, we got to get past that because it's
yeah,
dumb at this point.
yeah.
Um,
Say what you like about Poison; those dudes were swimming in women.
well, I mean,
You know?
That's one way to look at
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
But I thought about this last night because I was watching the VHS for the Dirty Rotten Filthy Stinking Rich, where it's like
Mhm.
basically a live performance, and you look at bands like that from that era living where we live now with the way that bands are able to phone in most of what they do or pre-record stuff. I'm not totally against backing tracks, but it's gotten to the point now where sometimes you can't tell if
Hmm.
they're really playing the music and there's like not much of a show involved. And then you go back to these bands that are supposed to be like so bad. And I'm like, they were a fucking rock and roll band. They
And
were
they're nailing
really
it.
good. They were really good at playing their instruments. Janie is an amazing vocalist. So that's why I'm saying if you're still of that camp where you're just like, Warrant sucks, you're just calling yourself out as being a complete moron. Because whether you like that style of music or not, that's fine. That's a totally different thing. But
Hmm.
those bands that are supposedly so bad
Hmm.
were, were really great rock bands, and they
I
were out there doing the shit.
Yeah, because
And go ahead.
it's like I've always held this mindset of there are objective truths, and music is subjective, right?
Yeah,
Music is
yeah,
entirely subjective. However, what is objectively true, right? Someone can come up to me and they can say, I don't like Van Halen. Fine. I strongly disagree, but fine. What you cannot say is that Eddie Van Halen's a shitty guitarist, because
yeah,
you're wrong. It's
yeah,
just wrong, So, if someone turned around and said the guitarists in Warrant can't play, you join and you do that then,
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, whether or not, obviously, you compare other guitar players to other guitar players, and sure, there are going to be guitar players who are way better than others. But I just think that it's so weird to look at that music and still have this negative connotation to any of it. And I'm not just going to leave that with 80s quote unquote hair bands. I'm going to go even further to the people that shit on grunge bands or shit like that, because they were all bands that, like, you go back and, like, most of that kind of performance and stage presence and just, I don't know, blood, sweat, and tears, I guess, for lack of a better term, a lot of that doesn't exist very much anymore. There are still some amazing bands out there doing it, but most of the time, nobody has to work as hard as they used to. And these bands were so good at making that quote unquote hard work look like nothing. You know, oh, it's another band of pretty dudes with their hair done up. I'm like, well, yeah, but they're playing just as amazing of a rock show as somebody else, and they had to do their makeup and hair before they went out. That's extra work. So I just think that that's such a tired way to look at things, and liking music is different, but I was watching that video and I was like, man, they were just a really badass band. And
Absolutely.
there's no denying that, because it's like, it's just clear when you watch them. And but a lot of those bands, I'll throw Poison in there too. I'll throw what's that other one? Winger. I'll throw Winger in there too.
Yes. Yes.
Winger being one that, like, some of those guys are amazing musicians.
Yeah.
So
it's like the bridge section in 17.
In 17, I love that. Yeah. I love it.
Like,
yeah,
they didn't need to do that, but they did it.
It was unnecessary.
Yeah.
I feel like that part of the song is just for, like, some of us, where we're just like, yeah, this song's good, and then you hear that middle part and you go, ooh, that's pretty tasty.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, all right.
Dodgy lyrics aside.
Yeah, that is one thing that it will always baffle me to this day, but whatever. but I almost feel like that in itself, so much of that was a default setting where if you were going to write a provocative and sexy song, the girl has to be underage.
Yeah.
And I was like, so I think it like, at least maybe in half of the circumstances, I don't think the dudes were looking for underage girls. In the other half, I feel like they probably were. But it's just one of those things where I'm just like, why is that the default? Why can't you be like, I met this girl, she was 32, and that makes me go, 32, that's good. She could, because she's been around, she knows what to do, and yeah, it's like, sorry, that sounds way more appealing to me than this girl that doesn't know how to drive, and I got to teach her how to do all the things. I'm like, no, that's too much work. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be a part of that. Anyway, were we still on? What were you talking about?
I've kind of wrapped up my takes on Born Again.
Okay, let's get this out of the way. My number 6 is Under the Influence from 2001.
Okay.
So this ends up being higher than the other ones because I like Janie's voice. Mm-hmm. The 2 original songs on here I think are really good.
Yeah.
The production, it's all right. But this is Janie's last quote unquote Warrant album. And my big gripe about it is that the selection of covers is really boring. It's literally like, hey, let's pick a bunch of songs that 100 other bands have already covered on their cover albums, and just gets to a point where just like,
the safest bar band set list.
Yeah, it's just like, just be more adventurous with your covers. Yeah. But they're probably songs that were very influential, not just to Janie, but to the other dudes in the band. So it could be just an honest statement of like, hey, these are the songs that quote unquote influence us, i.e. the name Under the Influence. But at the end of the day, it's a covers album, and I wouldn't go back to listen to it again, but it's got Janie on it, and I like hearing Janie sing, and the 2 new songs are good. Which brings us now to top 5, which is now we're in Janie Lane zone.
Yeah.
And honestly, the my number 5 is the last album that I have any sort of real gripe about. Top 4, forget about it. But yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Hold on, I gotta get. I've been like having either severe allergy or some shit
Okay.
going on with me, so I'm getting me a lozenge while you're talking.
Very nice.
I'll try not to be too clicky with it. Well, because I don't know.
This is an ASMR podcast.
I don't know if you can hear that, but
Yeah.
sometimes I'm reminded by my wife that I make too much noise with my mouth, if you know what I mean. I'm just kidding.
Hey.
No, while eating food.
Can you imagine like an ASMR hair metal album where you're like, there's a picture of your house and you're standing by the door, like shit like that. Like,
That shit's creepy to me. I don't know why.
yeah, I don't know. Some stuff works for me, and then like some other stuff is like, I
Yeah.
need an adult. I need an adult. But yeah, so my number 5, we're in the top 5.
Yep.
My number 5 is album number 5, and that is Belly to Belly.
Same here. We matched up on our number 5.
Okay, so this is the last album of entirely original material to feature Janie Lane on vocals, and it continues the alt metal / grunge direction of the previous album, but with an increase in sitar usage, which I am completely on board with. It's almost like they heard, oh, what the hell have I? And they were like, that's going all over this album.
Yeah.
And it's a cool album. Again, not necessarily what I reach for when I find myself in a Warrant mood. However, it does have Janie Lane on it, and Janie Lane's a kick-ass songwriter. So I've been toying with the idea of when life stops being crazy for me and I have a little time, I've thought about making a series on my channel. Those who watch my channel will know I haven't uploaded in almost a year because I've had other band shit going on and other adventurous things going on. But don't worry, I'm still alive and I'm working on things.
He has much more of a life than I do, people. So I'm at home so much, and when I'm not working, that's why I'm constantly doing videos and all sorts of other shit because I like keeping busy, but I also don't like going anywhere. So I'm just here.
Yeah. Honestly, once everything settles down and I've settled into it and I have a schedule again, I'll be able to say, okay, this is filming time, this is editing time, this is rehearse time, this is record, produce time. I'm a very busy person, and I tend to not give myself that credit because I'm like, you still find time to play Grand Theft Auto in the day, and it's like,
it's all right
only for like the length of a fucking movie, which is what everybody does nowadays. But like, anyway, where I was heading with that is I've thought about doing a series called Navigating the 90s, and it's essentially gonna be a deep dive on glam bands in the grunge era and post the grunge era. So like like 90s glam metal basically, and how they, whichever way which bands survived and which were kind of brought down by it. But it's something that's always interested me, and I'm surprised I've never put that into a video, but I'm thinking about it, and I'm it's something that's on my mind. That's like, yes, this is something I can sink my teeth into.
overall, that era of music, of that particular kind of music, has really grown on me, and I'm really into those albums. So all of the 80s bands that were putting out albums in the mid 90s, even the albums like when we get to talk about Belly to Belly, that I don't think it's amazing, but there's something about those albums that it's such a product of the time, and I feel like it's the kind of albums that would never happen again. No matter
Yeah.
how hard you tried to recreate it, it would never be right. So
It's a time and a place thing.
yeah,
Yeah. And like I say, it's not necessarily what I reach for, but Jenny Lane just has this personality that is
yeah,
impossible to deny. And I think the fact it landed at number 5 for both of us was a good opportunity for us to really dig into this era. So
yeah.
over to you. Over to
Oh
you.
yeah. So I my big gripes about this album are the dry production. There are albums that have more of a dry production if you go back to the couple albums prior to Belly to Belly, but I think that they're done in a way that they sound way better than this one.
Hmm.
Because sometimes the kind of songs, even when Janie's doing the '90s, heavier rock stuff that he was doing, I feel like it needs better production than
Yeah.
what's on Belly to Belly. These are still great songs. And I like the fact that in many ways you can still hear that he is constantly trying to expand his
Yes.
his scope as a songwriter. Like you can clearly hear it. You start from album number 1 all the way to here. You always hear him. He's trying new things, and trying to just write really great songs. Like I almost feel like he doesn't want to just phone anything in, even so. And that's the one thing, I don't think anything on these 5 albums sounds phoned in. Even if there's songs I don't like as much, I really feel like he put his all into this music. Now you get to a song like Angry Young Man and it kind of annoys me because there's nothing worse than the '90s songs by a band where they're pointing out cliches of music.
Yeah.
And that stuff didn't age well. And in this particular case, it's literally a song where they're pointing out cliches of the music that they are currently making while coming out of an era that had all kinds of cliches involved in its music. So
Yeah.
it sounds a little bit like trying to hide the past by poking fun at the present, which you are also now part of. It's really strange. But songs like this, or a lot of like punk bands in the '90s, all had those "sign me to a label so I can become a rock star." They would all do songs like that. And I'm like, oh God, that
Yeah.
didn't age well at all, because they're all, who are they all written by? Bands who just got major label deals.
Yeah.
So it's just that kind of stuff. That reminds me of being in my 20s, and I go, maybe don't write songs like that. But it's a product of its time. It was a really confusing time, and I can only imagine what it felt like, because if you think about Warrant, and then you take like Warrant first album '89. Let's go 10 years back, or a little bit further into the '70s. There were all these bands that were at that point legendary bands who took 2, 3, 4 albums to really like connect and break big. Flash forward to 1989, a band like Warrant comes out, first album blows up fucking massive. So they're not getting that sort of like, oh cool, we put out an album, we're going to go on tour supporting these other bands. And then the next album, oh, the tour's a little bit bigger, but we're still supporting this other band. Third album, oh, we get to do headlining gigs, but they're kind of in smaller venues, but we're headlining that. Some of these bands did not get that growth. Now, a lot of them, sure, they were playing club gigs for years, but when it comes to being a recording artist, some of these bands all of a sudden just thrown out, and like, oh, now you got to put on a stadium show now.
Yeah.
Do it. And they did their best with it. But imagine putting out their first album, getting nudged out, and being like, rock star, rock star, rock star, and then 3-4 years later, nope, like not you anymore. And so I'm just like, that kind of bothers me when it comes to bands like Warrant, because and I know it's not, well, it is partially record labels' faults, but it's also the fucking listening public. Like, so many people were so ready to just move on from shit all the time. And I'm like, well, why do you have to move on? Why can't you just build on top of that? Why can't you say, oh, I'm really into Pearl Jam now, but you know what? I'm going to go buy that Warrant album when it comes out too. Like, I don't understand why that's such a bizarre thing. But being somebody who was alive then and was a teenager around then, that was everybody's, most people that I came in contact with or saw, like, on, MTV or read in magazines, everybody was always constantly trying to distance themselves from something that already happened. And
Right.
and that fucked so many people up. And it sucks because, moving forward is always the best thing to do. I'll keep growing, keep expanding your horizons, but why do you got to get rid of everything else? Like, why does everything got to be a clear out every time?
Mm-hmm.
And we don't have that really anymore. So that's kind of cool. But the 90s just seemed like that's all it was about. It was about, this new thing is here, clear all that shit out. All right, now we got another new thing, clear all that other shit out. And I can imagine, like, once you get to 1996 for Warrant, and it's just like, man, we got a record deal, and then all of a sudden we were fucking massive, and then it all went right back down to where we probably should have been in the beginning, where we were, we should have been building up. So, and I can only assume what that feels like, because I played in bands that nobody's ever fucking heard of, never got a record deal, never got to do tours like that. But I can imagine if I was one of those people, it's got to be devastating. It's got to be devastating to be a person that puts your all into doing music and be in a band where you guys fucking go out there and you just, leave several pounds of sweat on the stage every night.
Yeah.
And then you wake up one day and everyone's like, you suck now. And it's just lame.
Yeah.
But,
there's that story, isn't there, of I think it's Janie talking about how, like, he went into this office and this, like, the record label company,
Columbia Records.
Had a huge poster of Cherry Pie, like right over the desk. And then when they walked back in there 2 years later for, like, Dog Eat Dog, it was Alice in Chains' Dirt. Now, Alice in Chains' Dirt is an incredible album.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
But that must have been a seismic thing of, oh, shit.
Well, I think that particular story, I think the reason why it hit home for him was because they had put out Dog Eat Dog and it wasn't doing very well. And they weren't getting the promotion that they thought that they were going to get. Because a lot of those bands, they were just pushing things out and being like, all right, be done with you. And then on top of that, he goes to the record label and then sees that their poster has been removed. So it's almost like all of a sudden everything clicks and it's like, oh shit, like we're not the band anymore that they're going to be helping out.
Yeah.
And it sucks. That sucks, but it would have felt a lot different if the record label was giving the same attention to Dog Eat Dog that they gave to Dirt. Because then he probably would have walked in and said, "Oh shit, Alice in Chains, great fucking band." Because there's no feeling of, like, now we're not the favorite son anymore, kind of thing. That sucks. But that's major record labels for you. But
yeah, bastards.
Yeah. Anyway, am we still talking about Belly to Belly? Yeah. It's very enjoyable because I like this era of stuff, but I think that the 4 albums prior to this are miles ahead of what this is. But this is still good. I just think that I love the first 4 Warrant albums. So
yeah,
let's keep going then on top 4.
Okay, so coming straight off of that, let's step back a year. My number 4 is Ultraphobic.
All right.
Okay. Oh, okay. Cool.
Oh, I think my ranking here is going to be very strange to a lot of people.
Okay. Okay. I'm interested. I'm really interested because I'm the same as you. this era fascinates me.
Yeah.
Ultraphobic obviously is their take on the grunge era. You know,
Hmm.
at this point, you know, and to be honest, you know, while goes grunge is often scoffed at, you know, I believe it coming from Warrant. There's an element to it where I'm like, you know what, I could see this band doing this, you know, because
Yeah.
th- it became very clear very quickly that they wanted to mature, you know,
Yeah.
because
Every single album has a little bit of a step forward in maturity, I believe. But it's not like they go from like the way what Kiss did with that, with, you know, the whatever that album is, Carnival of Souls.
yeah,
It's like it's not like that drastic of a jump.
yeah,
But yeah.
that's the thing. Like, you know, that is a case of a band that hit it out of the park in not only one but two distinctly different eras.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, you know, hearing someone as successful as Paul Stanley or Gene doing a grunge song, you know, there is something kind of laughable to it because even they said they weren't behind it. You know, they just wanted to fit in a little bit,
Yeah.
but you know, when you listen to "Dirty Rotten Filthy Stinking Rich," that is through and through a hair metal album. But
Yeah.
if you took Cherry Pie off of Cherry Pie, it's more of a hard rock album already. Like
I
you listen
mean,
to stuff like Uncle
in
Tom's
certain ways,
Cabin,
I have a different take
yeah,
on that one too, but we'll get to that.
yeah. But by the time Dog Eat Dog comes around, it's they're like Skid Row levels of hard rock, you
Hmm.
know. Um, and I think Dog Eat Dog and Slave to the Grind have a lot in common.
Sure.
Um, but Ultraphobic, again, like I say, Glam Goes Grunge often gets thought of as just bandwagon hopping. But no, I actually believe it coming from these guys because Janie Lane always wanted to mature as a songwriter, and being the cherry pie guy was a curse to him. Um, and while this album didn't perform nearly as well as previous efforts, it's a very interesting listen and a
Hmm.
very rocking album.
Yeah.
Um, Obviously, they've completely shed almost any trace of 80s pop metal at this stage.
Hmm.
Um, which the shame of this is that for a brief moment in like 91 to 92, we hear glam and grunge coexisting,
Yeah.
like occupying the same level of limelight,
Yeah.
which is very quickly just major label going, fuck out of here, it's grunge time,
Yeah.
you know? And again, that's just a sad side effect of the record industry at the time. But honestly, Ultraphobic, I feel like I have been doing myself a disservice having only listened to the first three Warrant albums before this. And I know those first
Yeah.
three Warrant albums very well, but
Hmm.
for years I was very much of the mindset of things tend to cut off around 93 for my interest in these bands. But you know what? I've been doing myself a disservice.
Yeah.
Some of this stuff fucking slaps.
I mean, you get. I mean, that they only. I think that the glam bands get the brunt of the criticism for that because there was because of the image thing that because a lot of bands, you know, Metallica being one of the most famous, went started changing their style up and doing different things. It
Yeah.
wasn't just the glam bands, and it wasn't just because of grunge. There was
No.
a. I feel like there was a collective sort of um I don't know, a push away from genre being important, which I think is honestly great. But once again, that's also something that makes the 80s really great because there are some definitive genres of stuff. But then you get into the 90s and even stuff that people say, oh, this is grunge. I listen to it and I go, is it really? I mean, it's hard rock music. I don't really
Yeah.
know. But it's only because of the drastic change, mostly in appearance, and no longer
Yeah.
writing like fun songs about girls or whatever, I guess. But
Yeah.
um, it's just none of that stuff in hindsight seems that drastic to me. It all seems, when you think about how quickly a lot of these things happened, it makes
Hmm.
sense to me.
Well, the same amount of time at this point, if you want to have a look at like timeline wise, the same amount of time has passed, like from, if you were to say 1990 to 94,
Yeah.
we've been doing this podcast for that amount of time,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
nuts. Like,
Yeah.
it's not a long time, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole grunge era, is a tragically short-lived movement in the mainstream because, everybody upped and fucking died. Like,
Yeah.
it's sad, but oh, it's just, yeah, it's a very weird thing.
Yeah.
That, um, but yeah, regardless, it's a very interesting time, and Ultraphobic is one of those albums from them. Oh, fuck's sake, you ever pick up a glass and the coaster comes with it?
Yep. All the time.
Annoying. Right, yeah. Anyway, that's my number 4, Ultraphobic.
Cool. Awesome.
Cool.
My number 4, yeah, my number 4 is probably different to a lot of, I don't know, I haven't seen other rankings of Warrant, but it's probably very different. My number 4 is Dog Eat Dog from
Really?
1992. And I love this album. It's a great album. Their third album, which out of the 4, this is the only one that to me has a little bit of like a transitional kind of growing pains kind of vibe to some of it. Where it does appear to be a reaction to what was going on at the time. But like I said, it was clear that as a songwriter and everything, Janie was trying to like push things into a more straightforward rock, or to, just be a little bit more serious with the songwriting. But some of it is a little heavy-handed if you really think about it. Looking at the song title, Andy Warhol Was Right, is painful. That is one of the worst song titles I've ever seen in my life. It's so woe is me and it's like, and this is prior to them really knowing that their time was over, but you could see that a new kind of music was coming in and getting popular. And so that whole thing just makes me kind of go, eh. I mean, he doesn't, that song could have had a better title. But yeah, this album, if I could put it into sort of a human characteristics, this almost feels like Warrant going through puberty, and you have those odd puberty times where your voice is cracking or whatever. And this is a little bit of that, where they're really trying to be mature with it, and they're doing their best, and there's some great fucking songs on here, but there's also a little bit of that, I'm a grown up now kind of vibe. And but I will go on record and say that I really think that of this era of the 91, 92, Poison, all these different bands that did albums around this time, I think Dog Eat Dog's one of the best. Maybe not. I wouldn't put it above Slave to the Grind, I don't think, but
I wouldn't put it above Slave to the Grind, but it definitely falls into that category of late stage hair metal goes heavy.
It does, but it's a really great album. Now, we're gonna get on. This is one of 2 times that I'm going to talk about Janie Lane ripping songs off. That kind of bums me out. But the only reason it bums me out is because in these 2 separate occasions that I'm going to talk about, it's not an accident. It's not an accident. Hollywood, So Far So Good is Jane Says by Jane's Addiction. It's literally ding, 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 ding.
How have I never noticed that? Holy shit.
And then the way he sings it is the same notes, not identical, but that Perry Farrell sings in Jane Says. And
hold up.
It's so
Hey, no. Keep going. I'm gonna do like a
So
live reaction to this.
now I do like this song, but it is absolutely he heard Jane Says and was like, I'm gonna write that song, and then he just literally didn't change the chords to the song. Yeah, it's like it's. Are you
Okay.
listening right now?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm getting to the vocal.
Yeah.
Is it in the verse?
Yeah, they're both similar.
Okay. Okay. Sorry for those who can't currently hear what I'm listening to. I am listening to Hollywood. So far, so good. And now I'm
Yeah.
looking for
Jane
there.
Says.
Okay. Jane says. Jane says is on
Nothing shocking.
Nothing. Sorry. Yeah. Oh my fucking god! It's exactly the same riff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Same rhythm, everything. Um now
That is very obvious.
but here's the thing, did he do that on purpose? Is it supposed to be because Jane's Addiction was this big newer band? Did he take one of their songs and be like, so I don't know, that's not clear, but it's definitely way too similar to be a mistake. So
Yeah, it's the fact. I just thought it was like da, 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 da. But no, there's even that banana lick in there. Damn, holy shit.
very similar. Very similar.
Yeah. Well, what was the other one? What was the other one you said?
We'll get to that. We will get to
okay.
that. But I think I've talked about the other one on another episode before, but we'll get to that.
I'm never gonna hear this.
But here's the thing. I we've talked about this before because I'm a songwriter. I've written a shitload of songs in my life, and I know that there are those moments where you write something and go, "Oh, this is great," and then you realize that subconsciously you had lifted from something else, not knowing that you did it. And it's quite possible to record and release a full fucking song before you realize it. So I have no problem with those because I think that I can hear when it's on purpose and when it's just taking something that you heard and not really realizing that that's what it is. So, but
I had a friend while you were talking about that. I had a friend who stayed up until like 4 a.m. writing this opus, and they showed it to me the following day. And I said, "You know, that's "Child in Time" by Deep Purple, right?"
yeah, yeah.
And he went, "Oh no."
Yeah. So, but that doesn't take away from that album for me. Like I actually like that song because I really do listen to it like he's kind of taking the piss out of Jane's Addiction a little bit, because Jane's Addiction also Hollywood band, I believe.
Janie's Addiction.
Janie's Addiction. You know what I'm saying? So I actually think it's kind of fun, but yeah, that album does have for lack of a better term, pubescent qualities to me. But still really good. Like I still think that album is way better than most people even talk about. Like it's beyond that. It's got some amazing songs on it. But I think the other three I'm gonna talk about are better. So let's move on to number 3.
Okay, so my number 3 is Dirty, Rotten, Filthy, Stinking Rich. The debut.
Yeah.
And it's got some serious bangers, but I think they'd go on to stronger material on the follow-up. As far as production goes, it's on the lower end of 80s production styles for me personally. I still enjoy it, but there's much better sounding 80s rock albums. But I mean, Down Boys and Big Talk are some fun, massive 80s rock songs. Sometimes She Cries and Heaven are excellent power ballads. I mean, dude, to come out with an album like this, and it clocks in at just 37 minutes. You know, it's a good in and out. So Damn Pretty should be against the law. I love the riff in 32 Pennies, the way it just opens the album up.
That is I've always thought that was a very cool. I've always thought that was a very cool album opener because it doesn't sound like a lot of other bands of that era's album openers. It's got a cool groove to it.
Yeah, and like in the Sticks, Riding High, Cold Sweat. This album's got some deeper cuts to it, and you know, it's a really good, fun 80s rock album, you
Yeah.
know? Um, with one of the stranger album covers of the era. You know, that they didn't opt for. I'm gonna hand it to them that they didn't opt for pretty with this album cover. It's like the
No.
ugliest glam album cover out there.
Yeah.
You know, it's not blazoned with a hot chick, you know, across the hood of a Corvette, you know, and it's not, you know, got them stood in a pink neon smoky alley. You know
Yeah.
exactly which album I'm talking
I
about.
love that album cover.
Yeah, yeah, it's great. It's just, it's really interesting, but it's definitely the poppiest album they did,
Sure.
um, and it's fun. It's a
Yeah.
fun 80s rock album. It's hard not to have a good time to this album. But yeah, like I say, it's there. It's a promising new bright upstart band
Yeah.
breaking through with some pop rock bangers. So yeah, Dirty Rotten Filthy Stinking Rich is my number 3.
Sweet. My number 3 is Cherry Pie from
Ooh,
1990. Their
okay.
second album. So I remember when this album came out because at this point I was already starting to watch a lot of MTV, and I even remember seeing the MTV news where even at that point Janie Lane's talking about the album was going to be called Uncle Tom's Cabin, and
Yeah.
then the record company wanted a song that was kind of like their last album, and so he wrote Cherry Pie, and that became not only the single but the fucking album title, and that fucking everything about the album was fucking
Yeah.
Cherry Pie. So, um, but I do have to say that I really think that there has been some revisionist history kind of written about this album
Yeah.
after the fact, because sure, I can understand Janie Lane wasn't happy that the label wanted him to do this other song, and he just sort of threw something out there because he knows how to write these fun, catchy songs, and it became a really big hit. Um, but I think a lot of what people say about Cherry Pie comes from later 90s, early 2000s Janie Lane. It doesn't
Yeah.
come from 1990 Janie Lane, because the album comes out. They do the video for Cherry Pie. He meets his wife. Well, he ends up marrying, was it Bobby Brown? Is that her name?
Yeah.
He ends up marrying her because he meets her on the set of the video. The album is released, is really popular. They're successful. They're going out on tour. I have a feeling he was feeling fine at that point. You
Yeah.
know? So what sucks is what happened after the fact, because Cherry Pie gets slapped as this ultimate example of how shitty 80s glam rock was. That's the unfair part. And so later on, Janie Lane regrets ever writing it. But once again, I think that that's just in hindsight, seeing how he got, if they had been, if Dog Eat Dog had been given the respect it deserves and had been a very successful album, I don't think we would have heard Janie talking about Cherry Pie that way, because Cherry Pie was continuing the success of Warrant, him getting to write songs and be in a band and go on tour, and they were living the rock and roll lifestyle, and that was on the tail end. That's the tail end of that whole thing. And then on top of that, every time I listen to this album, the only song that sticks out as doesn't really fit is Uncle Tom's Cabin. All the rest of the songs, there are other fun songs about chicks on this album, and everyone acts like it's a serious rock album from beginning to end. And I'm like, there are 2 or 3 songs that maybe have a similar vibe to Uncle Tom's Cabin, but Uncle Tom's Cabin sticks out like a sore thumb to me on this album. That being said, I think this album's fun as hell. I love the more serious side of things. I love all of the different flavors of songs on here. I think it's a really well done album, and now 30 plus years later, it's a cool little snapshot of like, oh, 1990, the year that wasn't quite the 90s yet. It
Yeah.
was still very much in the 80s. But I just think that the two albums that are above this as cohesive albums are two of the best things that Janie and the Warrant dudes put out. But Cherry Pie is fucking fun as hell and great and doesn't deserve the hatred that it gets. Even the song Cherry Pie is fun. It's just, if you just listen to the lyrics, it's not serious. No. There's no way to take that song seriously. But people did, unfortunately. But I may have brought this up before. I don't know if we've talked about Cherry Pie on another show, but I always have to bring up how somebody once ruined the song I Saw Red for me. And not ruined it, because I love that song so much. But now I can't listen to it without thinking this. And they said the very last line in the chorus sounds like something that Forrest Gump would say to Jenny. I don't think. I don't think I'm gonna love you anymore. Because really, like, that's such a weird line. I don't think I'm gonna love you anymore.
Okay, hang on, wait. I need to do this. I saw red or Warrant lyrics. Okay.
Are we listening to the song?
No, I'm gonna. Okay. And I saw red when I opened up the door. I saw red. My heart just spilled onto the floor. And I didn't need to see his face. I saw yours. I saw Jenny. I saw red, and then I closed the door. I don't think I'm gonna love you anymore.
But here's the reason why it ruins it for me, because honestly, all of the lyrics up until then are fantastic. Like I honestly, as a songwriter, get chills at the line, I didn't need to see his face, I saw yours. That, right now, talking about it gives me chills. That is amazing lyric writing right there about that particular subject. And so literally it's always, I saw red and then I closed the door. If he'd ended it there, genius. But then he adds a line, I don't think I'm gonna. It's like, now the song like has that moment where I go, oh, that's so great. And then all of a sudden it's fucking Forrest Gump. Dude. I can't.
You do know that this is going to become like a recurring segment now. We need to find the most Forrest Gump ass line in every discography.
Oh, I would love that. But this is one of the best examples. And I never thought about it until it was brought up to me. And now that's all I can hear is like, that's something that Forrest Gump would have said. I don't think I'm going to love you anymore.
Life is like a cherry pie. I know a secret in Uncle Tom's cabin.
Mama said that's where the down boys go.
32 pennies in a ragu jar is all I got in my name.
but jokes aside, I think Cherry Pie is a fantastic album, and I have a blast every time I listen to it. But I do think that there's a little bit, like I said, a little bit of revisionist history, I guess, or revisionist opinions on it, I guess. Because I definitely would not. If somebody said, "Oh, they're going to release another special version of Cherry Pie and they're going to remove the song Cherry Pie," I'd be like, "Fuck you!" I don't want to hear the album Cherry Pie without the song Cherry Pie. Thank you very much. But anyway, yeah, I like that album. But like I said, the two that are my top two, I think as cohesive albums are the best that they did. So moving on, your number two.
Cool. I can jump straight off of that because my number two is Cherry Pie.
All right.
And, this is the icon of late stage glam metal, hair metal, whatever you want to call it. Cherry Pie may be the quote unquote Warrant song to the general population, but
Yeah.
true Warrant fans know that this album has some weight to it under the surface.
Uh-huh.
I mean, Uncle Tom's Cabin alone highlights the instant jump in maturity with the songwriting. You know, that song absolutely fucking bangs. And
Yeah.
I mean, oh, dude, it's the band befell an unfair fate, frankly.
Yeah.
Um,
But
I
it,
saw Red.
but that unfair fate was not their doing.
It wasn't.
I just
I don't. No.
Cherry Pie didn't ruin them. So
There are hair metal bands that self-destructed.
Oh.
Twisted Sister,
yeah,
Dokken. You know that they were gone before grunge showed up. You know,
Yeah.
there were some glam metal bands who just nosedived into the ground, whereas there's some that were just fucked by record labels. I mean, I Saw Red is a great ballad. And is there a glam metal song more underrated than Mr. Rainmaker? Like,
yeah,
good God, that song rules. I mean, quite possibly, but it's definitely one of those underrated songs that I think, how is that not a monster of a hit?
yeah.
But honestly, I fucking love this album. It's a fun album. And dude, Bed of Roses sure feels good to me. Love in Stereo, Blind Faith is another ballad. Song Dance Man, you're the only hell your mama ever raised. Train. And any conversation about the album Cherry Pie would be incomplete if we didn't mention the Ode to Tipper Gore track at the end, which compiles 55 straight seconds of obscenities taken from recordings of live performances.
Yeah, which is funny because without that song, I don't think there's any cuss words anywhere on the album.
I think there's one in, is it Train? Is there one?
Oh yeah, I think you're right. But I don't even think it's an actual lyric.
All a fucking board
Yeah.
is at the beginning of the uncensored version. But you know, aside from that, I mean, there aren't any shits, fucks, or that one all over this album, aka the Metallica sticker.
Yeah.
I always love that.
Yeah, this is back too, and like a lot of bands were battling this because of the whole PMRC and putting labels on albums, which eventually, hindsight has shown us all it did was help bands putting the labels on the albums.
Well, now I know what to buy.
Yeah, but also like this is like one of those things where like it's really weird to listen to songs from the 80s and 90s that are about freedom of speech because they're referring to shit like this, whereas now whenever you see some rock artist doing a song about freedom of speech, it's always like, I want to have the freedom to be an asshole and talk shit about people who aren't like me. Freedom of speech.
It's transformed from anti-censorship to the N-word pass, basically,
or whatever it is they want to be shitheads about. But so some of those songs that don't, to me, like they haven't aged well, but I always have to put myself in the mindset of like, I know what they're talking about. I remember feeling this way. I know, censorship was bad. They were trying to tell us Ice-T couldn't put out Cop Killer. And I was like, fuck that, Cop Killer rules. But
fuck you and do what you tell me. That's the sort of, stuff I can get behind,
But once again, fuck you and do what you tell me was not about being told to use pronouns. It was about something very different.
Yes.
And But anyway, sorry. That's a different episode altogether.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
We're just coming off the heels of the Ted Nugent episode where we covered several socioeconomic issues.
If you missed the Ted Nugent episode, I was surprised at how that one went. Like that's probably one of the most interesting episodes I think we've ever done.
Yeah, certainly a very insightful conversation.
Yeah, be prepared for some edgy conversation on that Ted Nugent episode, ladies and gentlemen. Mm-hmm. If you didn't watch it,
absolutely.
Anyway,
but yeah, like I was saying, Cherry Pie, great fun.
Oh yeah.
O- over to you.
All right, top two. My number two, super underrated album in my opinion, 1995, Ultraphobic, from
Hmm.
the fourth Warrant album. A 90s rock album. There's no other way to put it. It's just that heavier 90s rock sound. But I love it because it feels like a natural progression from Dog Eat Dog.
Mm-hmm.
It's got a drier sound to it, but to me, it's very well produced. And funny enough, it's the same. It's Beau Hill. Beau Hill produced Dirty Rotten. He produced Cherry Pie, and then he came back for Ultraphobic.
Hmm.
And I think it sounds great. And I think it's just fucking great songs from beginning to end. And yeah, not enough people talk about Ultraphobic. Like like if you think Warrant, these songs don't sound the way that what you're going for, except for the fact that it's Janie's voice and you can hear his songwriting style, the kind of things that he does with melodies and songs, and it still feels like a Warrant album to me, which is why when you flash forward to the shit the band is doing now, they're doing shit where like they literally are pretending like Ultraphobic and Dog Eat Dog don't really exist in the world of Warrant, but to me they do. And one of the reasons why I actually, when somebody says, Warrant sucks, I'd be like, I'm pretty sure that you're very limited in what you know about Warrant. Because I think of Warrant and I think of that 4 or 5 album trajectory. And I think Ultraphobic is just so well done, sounds good, really great songs. And the fact that, like, at this point, it's 1995. It's already very clear, like they're all of a sudden not on a major label anymore. But it still doesn't stop Janie and company from trying to make quality fucking rock music. And
Yeah.
there's something about that really, like, because even in 1995, people were already saying that grunge was over in
Yeah.
1995. And the Here Warrant are still putting out really quality stuff, even though they know they're not going to get the fucking support that they deserve.
Mm-hmm.
And so I always hear this album, and it just always just feels like such a wasted effort. And unless it gets, I really think that this is one of those ones that some company needs to do a vinyl reissue of it, and we need to, like, just get it back into the rotation of people talking about it, because I just think it's so good. And once again, it is that era, the mid 90s, 80s bands doing more straightforward rock stuff in the 90s. But I think that Ultraphobic is one of the best of that grouping of albums.
Yeah.
So it ends up being at number 2, just because I can't really find any flaws in it for what it is. I think it's really good. And that brings us to number 1, which our number ones are very different.
So, my number 1 is 1992's Dog Eat Dog.
All right.
And for all its transitional, growing painsy edges, it just so happens to land in arguably my favorite year in music, 1992.
Yeah.
And it just has that perfect sound for me, that it's not quite 80s, but it's very ambient and very loud and very rockin' and very old school at the same time. And it strikes that balance of residual 80s songwriting and hard-edged early 90s metal. And it's like riding the line between the two, which is a big part of what I love about this era so much. And this album, to me, like I've said throughout this episode, has a lot in common with albums like Slave to the Grind by Skid Row, where it's not quite jumping on the grunge thing just yet, but it's adding more edge and oomph to it.
Yeah.
There's riffs on here that at a push could maybe make it onto a Pantera album, and that's something really cool about this type of album.
Hmm.
I mean, let's look at the track list, shall we? I mean, it kicks off with Machine Gun. Hole in My Wall is still my favorite Talkbox solo ever. You know,
Yeah.
I know a lot of people point to the Peter Frampton one, but like, goddamn, it's
No,
just
they should be pointing to Kickstart My Heart.
yeah, yeah. There's that one too. But there's just the first time I heard that, like, build up, build up, build up, boom, hole in my wall. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, that's
Yeah.
filthy. I love it.
Yeah.
April 2031. I mean, like,
Speaking of songs that stick out like a sore thumb on an album, but I still like it. But it is very like, what album is this supposed to be on?
yeah, yeah, and it's like, tell me you heard no more no more tears without telling me you heard no more tears. With that massive squealy.
Yeah.
Like you said, I have always found Andy Warhol was right to be like one of the album's weaker points. But then you immediately get Bonfire, like, just has that fucking groove to it. The
Yeah.
Bitter Pill is an incredible song. And I love that like change in the middle. It's like ding 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 ding
Yeah.
ding ding. Awesome. Love everything about that. Hollywood, so far so good.
Jane says.
Yeah, Janie says.
Janie says.
It's yeah. Up until this episode, I'd never connected the dots, but
Sorry.
I'll never. You've ruined so much Warrant for me, man.
I got one more to ruin.
Oh shit! Oh god! Is it another Forrest Gump? Because I need to hear
Oh, no.
more. I need
No.
to hear more Forrest Glamp.
It's actually not anything that's going to ruin the song for you, but it is something that not enough people talk about.
Okay.
Actually, nobody but me talks about this. So
Okay.
this is
I'm
an exclusive.
Okay. Like, All My Bridges Are Burning is a great song. Quicksand, Let It Rain, Inside Out, man. I fucking love Inside Out. That's in a playlist on my Spotify called Get Somewhere Really Fast. And like there's just
Yeah.
a song, you know?
Yeah.
Complete with a get this mic out of my fucking face right at
Yeah.
the end, you know?
Yeah.
And his versatility as a vocalist, he is absolutely
Oh yeah.
screaming on this song. And,
Yeah.
and like I wish there was more of this, you know,
Yeah.
yelly Janie. And then Sad Teresa closes it out. Again, like I say, it's a heavy album with a hefty amount of ballads on it. But what it brings in rock, it brings in spades. And I've just found out there's a Japanese edition bonus track called Lincolns, Mercuries, and Fords that I'm assuming is a cover. But either way, that's a song from an awesome album session that I do not know about, and I will be checking out right after this.
I don't think I've heard it. So yeah.
Yeah, cool.
But which brings us to my number one, Dirty Rotten Filthy Stinking Rich from 1989.
Very nice.
Their first album. This album has to go here for me just because I think it's one of the best of that era of the late 80s hair, quote unquote, hair band music.
Yeah.
Just because it's like, it's got so many memorable songs, but it's just such a great time. And I almost feel like when it comes to that style of music, this is one of the first albums that you should put on. You know, maybe Open Up and Say Ah would be another one, but this one is up there. Just like absolute good time rock music. And yeah, I love the way, I mean, you said the production is not great, but for some reason this album is I've always loved how it sounds and the way everything about it, it's almost like a comfort album for me because it's for lack of a better term, it's like a happy pill. Like I put this album on and like instantly I just feel good. And
Yeah.
so the thing that I was going to ruin that I don't think anybody else has ever talked about,
Sometimes she cries.
but I think that I may have talked about this on another episode because I know we did 1989, I think, before. But Down Boys. Down
Mhm.
Boys is an amazing song. I love that song so much. It is, if you take the skeleton of the song, the way everything plays out in the song, you take that and you can fit it exactly on a song called Bye Bye Love by the Cars that came out in 1978.
Okay.
Even the beginning, Down Boys is Bye Bye Love is and then there's even a thing where he sings the first line of the chorus and then there's a little I mean literally he just lifted the you can go listen to it right now if you want.
You
But
know
he
what? I am intrigued, and
so
I know Down Boys very well, so I can just jump straight to the Cars.
Bye Bye Love.
Bye bye, a baba loaf.
Just sort of take it as the template.
This is wow. Wow. That
And
really is a
and it
case
even
of
has the little part where it kind of gets a little calmer before the chorus, before you know where the can we rewind the way we've been. There's even a part where it does that, and then it comes up for the chorus, which in their song it's bye love, but on this one it's the where the Down Boys go. That's kind of where it kind of takes its own shape, but everything leading up to that, there's no
abs-
way that Janie Lane
yeah,
didn't listen to that song and go, I love that song. I want to write something that goes like that. And then, because the notes aren't the
yeah.
same. The
I,
notes aren't
I'm
the same.
I'm currently at the 50-second mark, and this is definitely yeah.
Now, I'm going to
I,
say, I will say something that might be controversial to some. I think Down Boys is a far superior song to Bye Bye Love. But,
yeah.
and so is there anything truly wrong with that? Because he's not ripping off the song. It's not the same notes, the same vocal melody, or the same words or anything. It's literally just a song structure that's real similar.
I think, and I'm of. I like to think this is a pretty forward thinking way of doing things. Something I have done in the past when I find myself in a rut, but like creatively, but I want to write a song. What I'll do is I'll go online and I'll find like a MIDI version of a song I really, really enjoy.
Uh-huh.
And what I'll do is I'll drag that into Logic Pro and I will basically deconstruct it. I'll like write out the structure of it, but then I will fundamentally change almost everything there into a new song
Yeah.
until it becomes its own thing. And
Yeah.
there's a couple songs I've written that started out as like Faith No More songs and ended up sounded like something by a completely different band.
Yeah. And honestly, if you really want to, you know, be honest about it, when it comes to music in general, especially when it's like rock music, pop music, or whatever, it's already a formula. And,
Yeah,
you know, there are plenty of bands out there that everybody loves that are just doing AC/DC songs or
yeah,
whatever, and nobody really cares. That's why, like, this it doesn't bother me, but it's one of those things that I've never heard anybody else say anything about it. And
yeah.
I hate that Janie's not around for me to ask him because I don't want to point it and be like, you ripped it off. I just want to be like, am I right? Please let me know
Yeah.
that I'm right because it's too close to be a mistake.
The thing that already pointed me to it was definitely the case was the digga-da, digga-da,
Yeah.
digga-da, 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 digga-da,
Yeah.
digga-da, like already that intro is so very specific,
Yeah.
and then to have the verses play out the way they do, it was
Yeah.
definitely
Yeah.
yeah.
So, but
And
it's just
if
it's just
not,
an
that is a
it's
deep-seated subconscious thought then.
Oh fuck
like, if
yeah,
it's
yeah. If he
not.
didn't do it on purpose, that is one of those things where that song was probably so ingrained in his brain, and he had just forgotten about it.
Yeah,
Like I don't know, but nobody talks about it, and so I think it's interesting. But like I said, I prefer Down Boys. I think Down Boys is one of the best hard rock songs of the '80s, late '80s.
yeah,
So much fun. It's just a blast of a fucking song. I always loved how in the music video, it seemed like in the beginning of it they were going to do some kind of choreography, but then they just abandoned it after like 30 seconds.
yeah. Have you ever seen that like live TV performance they did of it as well? And they do the same thing where they all do the twirl at the same time.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. I remember the first time I saw that and I was like, oh, that's cheeky. That's cheeky.
Yeah.
I didn't like, and at the time I was new to the hair metal thing and I didn't know whether to be impressed or disgusted by it. like I was just there in awe. I was like,
Yeah.
that is the most 1989 thing I have seen.
Yeah.
You know.
But yeah, that's my number one. I love that. I love this album, and I think it also went at number one for me because I think it's when somebody is thinking about Warrant.
Yeah.
If you're getting past the cherry pie aspect of it, I think this is kind of the best example of what made them Warrant, because this album was massive and it was a big hit for them. And I think, and it's great. Once again, it's just one of those things where it's a time period and it takes me back to that time period and it feels good. And there's, I miss a lot of that stuff, but I don't miss it also because I like it existing in the past. I don't want it to exist now. Although there are some bands that are doing like an 80s hard rock thing. I'm actually going to be interviewing. I sent you that band Wanted. Remember I sent them?
Yeah.
I'm gonna be interviewing them on Thursday or up for my next video, just because they seem to be really nailing that whole vibe in a way that a lot of bands aren't, and they're like super small band, and I'm just like, well, more people need to know if they're into that 80s hard rock sound. The band's called Wanted, but just keep an eye out on my channel because I'll be interviewing them. I have been playing some of their tracks on Old Head Radio.
Speaking of
if you
which,
haven't been listening,
have I added their album? Yes, I have.
They have two.
Yeah, I've saved them both.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, but there's not a whole lot of bands that, in my opinion, are nailing that whole vibe, and I think those guys are. But that's Warrant, everybody. Rest in peace, Janie Lane. That's a sad. There's that thing where he died of like alcohol poisoning, I believe.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those things that I feel like he had his own issues going on, obviously, so you can't point the blame at any one particular thing. But I think the way that he got just chewed up and spit out with not just the music industry, but music fans and shit like that, it sucks because we ended up losing what I think is a great songwriter and performer and singer. He clearly was self-medicating to deal with all kinds of issues, probably beyond that. But
man, he was only 47 as well.
Oh yeah, 1 year older than me right now. But yeah, so if you've learned anything from this, this is preaching to the choir because I know none of you watching right now are this, but don't be so quick to shit on things just because the times are changing or because it seems like the thing to do. Because it's not a good look in hindsight. So, all right. Bye, everyone. All right, no. Before we, before we get out of here, as we normally do when we finish a discography, we celebrate like this: 3, 2, 1. Yeah, we did it! Hell yeah!
Nice.
That song closed out my last Old Head Radio show, which you can listen to.
Damn this! Never more the whipping boy. Yeah, we did it.
That song makes me happy in a way that I can't even describe. Yeah, you can listen to the Old Head Radio show every
little bit of hip hop soul weed.
I'm trying to do a commercial, Eddie.
Sorry.
Friday nights at 8 Central. and Saturdays at 2 Central for the folks overseas because it's a nighttime for you guys.
Sorry, I got kind of carried away there with
Oh, it happens. I
the
understand.
Ja Rule.
Um, but also, you can listen to all sorts of shit 24 hours a day. We're on
24/7, motherfucker.
Old Head Radio. And go to my link tree. All right, boom. That's it. Thanks everybody. I feel like this has been a super long episode, but it's cool. We've been gone for a couple weeks, so we're giving you your money's worth, your time's worth. Fuck, I don't know. But do you have any closing thoughts before we get out of here?
Rest in peace, Janie Lane.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well said. All right, everybody. That's it for this episode of Cranked and Ranked. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Peanut Butter Platypus, Aluminium Squirrel, Belvedere Ball Sitter. What was the other one we added? We added another one last time, too.
Aluminium Squirrel, Peanut Butter Platypus, Belvedere Bull Sitter.
Oh no. It was what was the dog one? The dog one?
Oh yeah.
Space dog? Fuck, I don't know.
Yeah,
Some sort of dog.
Christmas dog.
Christmas dog. That's what it was.
Yeah, Christmas dog.
Christmas dog.
Christmas dog.
All right.
Christmas dog.
Yes. Christmas dog to all of you. All right. That's it. Thanks for being here. As usual, I'm going to throw it over to Mr. Eddie Sparxx to take us out.
My mom always said, later, dude.